to them, you know. By God's grace, some of them understood, and some of them became Muslims at that time and later on. My family, of course, their reaction was quite positive, actually, you know, because my father had been in the socialist, communist type movements when he was a youth and a young man, and he outgrew it to realize that it was not beneficial. And so we used to have these arguments before, and my mom used to be upset that, you know, we'd have it at the dinner table and we'd be at each other's throats over this communism, whether it's right or wrong or whatever. So it meant that those ended, you know, no more arguments about that. I was a Muslim and I believed in God, you know, as my mother did, my father did, and they had known something about Islam, so they respected Islam. So they were quite happy for me in that sense. I tried to propagate Islam as best as I could, but you know, for myself, to be honest, my knowledge was limited. So in my attempts to propagate Islam, maybe I made a number of mistakes. I turned off some people. Maybe I was a bit rough, a bit harsh, whatever. Not patient, and not maybe using the best words. So actually, my parents didn't become Muslims until some 26 years later, you know, when they finally accepted Islam. Perhaps it had a lot to do with my methods in those days. You know, I was a bit rough with them, not patient, whatever. So, and this is not, I could not take this as a standard to say, well, this is the standard reaction for people in their families. You know, I have friends, you know, who told me, example, I have a friend in England, you know, he's from Jewish parents, and he accepted Islam, and his, when he informed his family, they told him that for them, he's dead. In fact, in their home, they prayed the funeral prayer for him. And they had nothing to do with him after that. You know, they didn't want to hear from him, anything. They cut him off completely. You know, I have another friend who's from Ireland. You know, he, same thing is when he accepted Islam, his father refused to talk to him even until he died. These kind of things happen also. So it's not the standard. Different people's reactions are sometimes, you know, much more severe, much more rough. But the point is that when a person accepts Islam, they have a responsibility to share that Islam, obviously, with those around them, beginning with their family and their friends, etc., their circle. It's their duty to carry that message on. And in fact, it's just in the fulfillment of that duty that Islam spreads today, for example, in America, at the rapid rate that it does. You know, somewhere between 300, 400, and 500 people are accepting Islam daily in America, the United States of America. It's the fastest growing religion. Why? Not because there are, you know, thousands of missionaries, Muslim missionaries in America propagating, and, you know, no. In fact, the Muslim world spends virtually nothing in Islamic propagation, which is, of course, a mistake in and of itself. However, Islam is spreading there on its own. Each person who accepts Islam, they call the people around them, parents, relatives, neighbors, workmates, etc., etc. And just from that process by itself, you know, huge numbers of people are accepting Islam daily in America. And the Prophet ﷺ told us, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, that whatever you hear from me, even though it be only a verse from the Quran, you should convey it to others. We have another question which comes from Abu Dhabi. Sister writes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Bilal. I have something of a problem which I'd like you to explain for me. It is that sometimes my iman rises and it falls. The fitna always affects me, and my heart burns. But I still end up following my desires. What do you suggest for me to do? I would appreciate if you give this answer as soon as possible. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, my advice here in terms of Iman rising and falling, we need to know what are the causes of the rise of Iman and the falling of Iman. And it's a very simple process. It's not a complicated, complex problem which requires all kinds of in-depth research, etc., etc. No, the problem is very simple. The problem is, or the issue is, it has to do with righteous deeds. The more righteous deeds we do, the more Iman increases. The less we do, the more evil we do, the more Iman decreases. It's just simple as that. Do more righteous deeds, your Iman will increase. Avoid evil deeds, your Iman further increases. You do evil deeds, your Iman decreases. You avoid good deeds, your Iman continues to decrease. So faith is dependent on righteous deeds. Of course, the foundation of it all is belief, the correct belief. The correct belief in God, in Allah, in one true, unique God. After that, it comes to righteous deeds. But then the question arises, how do you define a righteous deed? What is a righteous deed? What people say is a righteous deed, what people say is a good deed. This is the good deeds, these are the good deeds. Well, they may be and they may not be. There are two basic criterion for a deed to be righteous. One, it has been prescribed by God or His messenger. And two, that when we do it sincerely for the pleasure of God. There has to be sincerity in doing it, so it doesn't become an act of showing off, of promoting oneself. And secondly, it has to be done in accordance with the way of the Prophet. May God's peace and mercy be upon him. When it's done, when these two factors are together in a particular deed, then such a deed is considered to be a righteous deed, and the person is rewarded for it. So the more of those that we do, the greater our Iman, our faith increases. The less of those that we do, the more evil that we do, the more it decreases. The fitna is something we can never escape. Prophet ﷺ had said, the believer who mixes with people and bears their harm is better than the believer who doesn't mix with people and bear their harm. المؤمن الذي يخالط الناس ويصبر على أذاهم خير من المؤمن الذي لا يخالط الناس ولا يصبر على أذاهم. This is the basic principle. Meaning that as long as you're mixing with people, there's going to be fitna, there's going to be trials, there's going to be difficulties. But to bear that, rather than going off into a monastery and just locking yourself away and just worshiping God in this way, Islam says, no, don't do that. Because whatever faith you gain through that, it's not real. It's fake. Once I take you and put you now in the midst of the community, the society, you fall apart. You cannot maintain this righteous aura that you developed, because it was developed in a false and unreal circumstance. It's not life. It's not normal and natural for us to live as hermits, live off by ourselves. I mean, a few individuals do it, but this is not the norm for life. And society couldn't function if everybody was a hermit. So, we have to bear with people. We recognize the trials, but whenever we receive a trial and we pass that trial, then we grow. Because the trials are there in themselves. The fitna is there for our growth. Growth by overcoming them. Prophet Muhammad, when he was asked by his companions, who are the people who receive the most trials in their lives? He said, the prophets, then those most like them. But Allah will try a person's faith. If He sees that their Iman is strong, then He will give them more and more trials so that when they're passing it, their faith grows. But if He sees their Iman, that their faith is weak, then He'll give them only a few trials. This is the process, the way things function. So, don't fear the trials and the fitna. Recognize them, know them, and struggle to overcome them. Know that with every difficulty comes ease. Fearing Allah, right? If we fear Allah with regards to these trials, then Allah will make a way for us. Show us another way and help us and support us in a direction that we never expected. This is Allah's promise. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah will find a way for him, an opening, an exit. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. And He will provide for him. He will give him provision from the direction which he didn't expect. This is the promise of Allah. If we believe in the Quran, then we have to work it, believing that that is real, that will happen. And work on those righteous deeds. Learn what we need to do. Try to implement them in all the different aspects of your life. And inshallah, the Iman will continue to grow. But it doesn't mean that Iman will not fall ever. It will still go down. It is the nature of human beings that Iman or faith rises and falls. But the more good we do, the rise tends to be more and more. That's all we can really hope for. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, In the Light of Islam. You may fax into us at 04-396-2193. That is Dubai, the Discover Islam Center. You may call there, 2190, and ask any questions you like. There are people there willing to answer any questions that you have, or find answers for you about Islam. But for me, you may fax in questions to me at that address. And you may write in to Sharjah Television, PO Box 111, Sharjah, UAE. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us, and I hope to see you in our coming programs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.